What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of SCUM. This is the podcast where we delve into the deepest, darkest, murkiest waters with a plethora of legendary guests. I am your host, your bastard of ceremonies, the numero uno scumbag, Rex Ruger. That's Rex with 3 X's. Don't get that twisted. 3 X's for a reason. Ladies, you know what I'm talking about. You're looking at me and you're thinking, what else do I know you as? Well, you might know me as a.k.a. the King of Sleaze, a.k.a. the hair metal high priest, and most importantly, a.k.a. Diamond David Lee Roth Jr. There he is. There's Pops, right there. Undeniable when you look at this face that I am the son of glam, the front man for the band. Just smoked a few grams, got a million fans. I'm your ice cream man, Mr. Wap, bam, bam, shazam. Hot damn. I'm feeling good today. Today I've outdone myself. First of all, let me tell you that as always, I'm coming to you from the lavish, luscious lavender lounge of love. And most importantly, I'm joined by my consigliere, my doorman, my security, my confidant, Mr. Keith Hernandez Puppet. You know him as a 1986 world champion of our beloved New York Mets. But today, I have outdone myself with a guest here. I throw around the word legend a lot, and I believe that all my guests are legends. But today, and I'll give you a little hint, has a little something to do with the shirt that I'm rocking today. Today, we got a bona fide one. Not that they all haven't been, but this is a guy that it is unmistakable. A legend. Enough said. Of course, I am the hardest working man in show business, bringing you this podcast and fronting numerous glam and sleaze metal bands up and down the eastern seaboard and around the tri-state New York area, but still bringing you phenomenal content. And I want to thank all my guests who come on here for helping me provide those great conversations and that phenomenal content. That being said, let me get my guest in here so we can throw down, because I am excited and geeking out over this one. This is, of course, the No Frills podcast. Why no frills? Take one look. You're getting thrills. You're getting thrills. Me. Right, Pops? Look at that. The smoldering look, the chest hair. Come on. Undeniable. But I digress, because I want to get down to my guest here. You don't get no frills. End of story. But if you are looking at my coif and you want to get that, you can. Because there's what I use. Now let me give myself a look, because I need to look good for this one. Oh. As if there's any other way that I could look. Oh, Rex. Trying to find a bad side on me is like, yeah, I don't know. Trying to find pants on a whore. It's just not there. I don't know if that's a great analogy or not, or people may find that offensive. But anyway, I'm going to make up for it today with a guest that you are literally seeing me invite right now as we speak. And boy, am I excited. I don't get too starstruck. I really don't. But today I am. Today, my heart's going. Boom, 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 boom. Had a good beat, but you can't dance to it. But this guy coming on here has helped produce some very iconic, that's right, iconic music. And you guys are in for a treat. It's a guy that I am very excited about. And again, I've done it before and I'll do it again. To quote our great American poet, Borat, I am very excited. I'm looking over my itinerary of things for us to talk about here, and man, I am excited. Keith, you excited back there? Talk to me, buddy. Must have been another long night for Keith. Keith does that from time to time. Told him last night, we got a big show today. But no, what'd you do? Boozing, partying, sniffing, or I should say snorting in your case. But what are you going to do with a guy who played professional baseball all those years and just stared at long white lines? I mean, come on. The temptation is there. The struggle is real. But Keith has really turned his life around. I can count on Keith. He's all business. All business. All business. That being said, while we wait for our guests to come in here, let me urge you, implore you, if you are a virtuoso player, and let me really get down to brass tacks here and look into the camera, and you would like to play in my band, Love Sword, and be the backing soundtrack to the second greatest frontman to ever do it, then hit me up. You can't have the frontman spot. There can only be one frontman. That's this guy. But if you are a virtuoso guitar player, if you can sit up at the bass, if you're a drummer, I might even consider throwing in some keys. I feel inspired. I feel inspired because I'm having this guy on, and should just be that. Should just be that link. But I don't know. Having a little trouble. Let me confer with my guest and see. This is the beauty of it. Ah, there he is. There he is. See? Right when I start texting him, there he is. Technology. You got a behind the scenes look at PodScum.
Okay, now we're
Is there a doctor in the house? And there is. Thank God, man. Boy, you know what? It's so great that technology makes everything so damn easy, right? I mean,
usually.
Listen, first of all, thank you so much for joining me. For my audience that has lived under a rock for decades and decades, this is obviously the great Matt, Dr. Fink of the Prince and the Revolution, which I consider Prince's. I'm wearing the shirt. I'm a super mega fan, but for me, the Prince and the Revolution years are just where I really felt like it was, all of his work is genius to me. But, I've done so many of these on here, and this was one of the legitimate ones where I felt like I was fanboying a little bit, Matt. I was fanboying a little. You've been such an integral part of the soundtrack of my life.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you've enjoyed the entertainment of the Prince camp over the years.
Enjoyed is not the word. And one thing I find really interesting is that obviously later on in Prince's career, he worked and created with a lot of different musicians. But you had a pretty long tenure with Prince, though. One of the longest ones, I would imagine, right?
No, not really. But for the Revolution, yes. I mean, I was there for about 12 years.
Yeah.
But there were a few people after me that were there longer. Actually.
Okay.
From the MPG that came and went and came back, and
right.
Like their total tenure definitely exceeded mine. But sorry, my cat is here.
It's all right. That's all right. The cat can be part of the interview too. We don't edit anything on here, man. This is raw. I'm almost a 50-year-old man that doesn't know a whole lot about technology. So
okay.
It all comes out as is. You know what I mean? Even now, if I have something wrong with my technology, I hand it to my kids. I'm even getting to the point where I hand it to my grandkids, and they're all under 10.
Oh yeah, of course.
And they know more.
they definitely.
So I'm curious. First of all, how you as a player come into contact with Prince? I know that's backtracking a lot, but how did you make the correlation? How did you link up with Prince?
Through Bobby Z, the drummer, who was a friend of mine back in the day. I mean, we weren't close friends yet. He's a couple years ahead of me in school. We both went to the same high school, but we knew each other via our mothers, who worked together when we were young kids, doing some fundraising events for the local Mount Sinai hospital. They did some skits together and things like that. So I was introduced to Bobby, I think, when I was about 6.
Okay.
At his house. He was 8. And that's where I first met him, because my mom and his mom had to rehearse and work on some stuff. And then eventually, I believe at one of those events, my father and his father were the MCs for the fundraiser, and then our moms were in a skit together to, just to entertain people to raise money. So that's how we met. But I didn't see him a whole lot growing up. Just occasionally I'd run into him. But in high school, by the time we were in high school, though, I saw more of him because he was in a band and I was in a band, and we were kind of checking each other's bands out, and we were aware of each other, but we weren't really in the same social circles at all.
Right.
But he came, after I was out of high school for about a year. I was in this local cover band playing around town and around the Midwest, and he came to me with Prince's demo tape to listen to it one night during a break during one of our gigs. And his older brother David had produced and engineered Prince's early demos that they used to send out to record labels to try to find him a record deal. So he played that for me, and I was highly impressed, of course, and wondered who the band was. And he said, it's not a band, it's a guy doing everything in the studio himself, playing all the instruments, writing everything. And he's your age. You guys are contemporaries. I go, you're kidding. He goes, yeah. I go, do you mean he's like 19 right now? He goes, yeah, he just turned 19. And I go, that's unheard of. I mean, there just isn't anyone I knew of that was capable of that to that level of the way he was performing and writing at that point in the studio.
Yeah.
And playing all the instruments. There were only a handful of artists and producers in the industry at that time, like Stevie Wonder and Todd Rundgren, and maybe if there's some other ones, I can't remember them all right now.
It's very rare, though.
Yeah, it's rare where they're all multi-instrumentalists, and then they can write and produce the thing themselves. But long story short, I threw my hat in the ring with Bobby right away and just said, look, I'd like to meet this guy. If he's putting a band together someday, I'd like to audition for the band. I go, there must be a reason why you came to me with this. Are you thinking of me playing keyboards with this guy? And Bobby said, yeah, I kind of am. That's why I wanted you to hear it. I wanted to see what your reaction would be. And I said, well, you got my reaction, so just let him know I'm interested. And then this was like late 1977 when that happened. So he wasn't signed to Warner's yet. Then he got his deal with Warner Brothers probably, like early 78. And then the album came out, I think, in the late spring, early summer of that year. Something like that. I can't remember the exact timeline of all this stuff. So by the end of 78, I managed to procure an audition for the group at that point.
And what are you thinking when you go in there? Because you've already heard and have witnessed, at least with your ears, the obvious genius of this guy. Do you remember what you were feeling, going to that audition and auditioning for this guy that you already knew was pretty goddamn talented?
Yeah, I was nervous, and there was definite, this is a make or break deal with an up and coming artist who has a record deal, which is pretty rare to have a major label record deal and live and be from Minneapolis, let alone still living in Minneapolis. Most artists would move to LA or New York, to deal with all that.
Sure.
So he was here. There was really nobody like him here in the Twin Cities at that time. There had been other groups that had been signed and done things, obviously, but so I was I was in there. I was fairly prepared. I was pretty prepared to go in there, but I still had to ask him for help on one of the songs because I couldn't hear the keyboard part properly. It was buried in the mix. That was the song Soft and Wet. And I said, I'm kind of getting this, but do you think you could show it to me? Exactly how it was played? And he goes, yeah. So he did. He showed me the part, and then I learned it pretty quickly and was able to play it for him. I think that was the thing that impressed him the most, because he told me the other keyboardists were struggling with that as well, because that he was auditioning, because it's not really in the mix to the level where you can go, oh, I can really pick that out easily,
Right.
So it was like a funky clavinet part that he played, which is really cool. Not let alone the synthesizer solo on that song too is amazing that he did. So yeah, I impressed him. And then it took about 3 weeks past that audition for him to decide to hire me, because they were looking at some other keyboardists too
Yeah.
at the time. But yeah, I ended up being his choice. Whether he regrets it or not, I don't know.
Well, I don't think he has any reason to regret it. But first of all, I would like to ask, as somebody who works in healthcare as their day job, I am a nurse by day. So I've always loved the fact that you rep the image and the style that you created for yourself, the doctor outfit, the scrubs, all that stuff. Where did that come from, and when did that come into play? I mean, when did you kind of adapt that as your persona?
Well, it was by accident in a way, because we were the opening act on one of our first tours ever for Rick James, and this was in late '79, going into spring of 1980. We were on the road for about 6 months with him, and 3 shows into the gigs, Prince came to me and he said, the current outfit you have on isn't working now, because the Rick is wearing your outfit during one of his songs, which was a black and white striped jail suit. So if you go if you go to YouTube and look at our debut on American Bandstand, I'm in a jail suit.
Okay.
which I picked because I like the black and white stripes that went with the keyboards. I
Fair
thought
enough.
kind of, and it harkened back to Jailhouse Rock.
Yeah.
Early days of rock and roll and all that. So Prince liked that. He said, "Yeah, I'll go with that look." Because everything had to go through him. You could bring your idea, but he had to give the final sign off.
Right. I can see that.
So he came to me and he goes, "I hate to do this to you, but you got to change your image, because he's wearing your jail suit on one of the songs." And I go, "Yeah, but it's just one song. So what?" He goes, "No. You don't understand. He's the headliner. You gotta shift gears right now. What was another outfit you were thinking, or what's another look you were thinking about?" And I said a guy in a scrub suit, but I didn't pick that initially because I thought it was too plain. It wasn't flashy enough,
Right.
And he goes, "Well, tell you what, I like that idea. Let's go get you a scrub suit and all the doctor accessories that goes with it."
Yeah. The
So
accoutrement.
so if you look at the Dirty Mind band picture, which was on the inner sleeve of that album,
Yep.
although you can't get that too much anymore now, it's just hard to find.
Yeah.
That's when I was just completely. He had me covered. He said, "I want you to wear the mask and your sunglasses, which you already had on, and the stethoscope and the surgeon's hat and the whole thing. Just go for it." Because people will go, "Who's that mystery man?
Yeah.
Who's the guy with the
Yeah.
doctor look with the sunglasses?
I love it. It worked.
He looks like a horror movie doctor." So that's what happened, and the rest is history.
Now, I'm curious. What really, really boggles my mind, and I know you weren't there from the very beginning to the very end, but what Prince managed to do in terms of productivity, 39, 38 or 39 albums in his whole history, which is just a staggering amount, sometimes multiple albums in the same year. What really blew you away about his ability to be so creative? Is he just one of those guys that just was just like turned on creatively all the time and could just roll stuff out just effortlessly, or because he's obviously like been noted in the press as an extreme work ethic, a big perfectionist. Was it hard to create with him, and how much input did he allow the rest of the band to have? Because obviously he likes things the way he likes them.
Yeah, he just was very prolific naturally. That was what was in him. So he was just one of those people fortunate enough to be inspired and have the talent and creativity to put forth all that material. Much like Bob Dylan, his catalog is massive and tons of unreleased material. Both Minnesotans. I think there's something about living in the cold weather and hunkering down in the winter that you just sit there and write music.
Spawns the creativity. Yeah, I mean, I'm here in upstate New York. It's very much the same thing. We're bracing ourselves, for the cold that is inevitably coming.
Right, right. And we have it. Unless you live in upstate New York, if you're in New York City, it's definitely milder there than in the Twin Cities.
Yeah.
But regardless, he I was highly impressed with that. And, I was always trying to give him stuff to work with. In the time I worked with him, I was throwing ideas, and he jammed a lot with the band, which is how he would get inspired, would be to improvise and come to rehearsal, or before rehearsal would start, he would just warm up for an hour
Yeah.
sometimes, just
Yeah.
jamming with the band, and then he'd record that a lot of
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. And then go through and dissect what he liked in it.
But I mean, most often he didn't grab much from that for himself. But every once in a while, something would spark an idea, and then he would say, "Hey, this idea came from that," and then he'd give you a writing credit or something,
Okay. Okay.
for partial. But he never allowed lyrics and melody from you. It was always musical ideas. He always insisted on writing his own lyrics and melodies against any chord progressions that you may have come up with, or I couldn't really. Sometimes I'd approach him with fully written songs, and he'd just say, "Nope, nope, nope, not my thing," And then yeah.
And now you as an artist, did you ever feel, slighted or jilted a little bit when he would do that?
Well, yeah.
It's hard. It's hard when you're creating something that you think is fantastic and you're handing it to somebody and they're basically kind of.
Well, the thing is, yeah, sure. It didn't really hurt my feelings as much as it, I'm disappointed. I guess he didn't like that enough to do anything with it. But the way I look at it, it's like his vision and his whatever he had in his head. Everybody's an individual, so I just accepted that he had his vision and what he liked, and that I couldn't read his mind. It's like pretty difficult to try to. I'm trying to write a song that he would write, or something that he would respect, and blah, blah, blah. So but every once in a while, there would be something that he would find interesting and do something with it. But no, after a while, I just accepted my role as his keyboardist, and mainly to tour as the touring keyboardist, sideman, and background vocalist, which was fine with me. I really didn't have a problem. Some artists or other sidemen, they aspire to be solo artists, and then they'd leave the group and do all that. I really didn't have those kind of aspirations.
You had no problem just being a member of the band.
That's right. Which is why I lasted as long as I did.
That's healthy. I think that's healthy. Because you're right. A lot of people do want to be up front, and then when they get up there, sometimes they realize it's not all it's cracked up to be. Not everybody, not everybody's necessarily built for the spotlight. I don't think.
I mean, granted, there were moments when I thought, do I want to try to do after leaving Prince, do I want to do the solo gig and try to drive my career as a solo artist and all that?
Right.
And for whatever reason, I thought, if I do that, I'm going to have to, A, get on the road again, B, always have to be on point and coming up with material and doing all that, and trying to get a record deal. And it wasn't easy to do that in those days for anybody.
No.
And plus, I wanted to raise a family here in Minneapolis. I wanted to have kids. And I thought, if I'm on the road a lot, it's just not going to be conducive to raising my kids and being a part of their lives in a big way. So that's why I thought, okay, I'm just going to get into the studio business and help other artists and help produce stuff that they need, or just be a session player, or, so that's where I went, and I was trying to just have a nice, stable home life for my kids.
Now, as I said, living in upstate New York, I am just literally a stone's throw away from the Carrier Dome, which has now taken on a much more of a meaning in the Prince annals of history, because now the big concert that you guys did there in 1985 has been released, put out on DVD. People have access to it. It's become an iconic concert. Well, I don't expect you to remember every little thing about a concert that happened 40 years ago, but what was the experience like as opposed to being in the studio and being out on a stage with Prince? What kind of stuff do you remember about him as a live performer, which is a totally different venue than what he can do in the studio?
Yeah, he really worked hard at that to work on his choreography and his uh, stage persona per se, and arrangements and all that. So he over time he just kept growing
Yeah.
and growing and getting better and better. So yeah, I observed his growth from the very first show in
Yeah.
January of 1979, which was like a showcase gig for Warner Brothers executives here in Minneapolis, and
Yeah.
they flew in from California, and they were in the cold weather you could imagine,
Yeah.
and came to these shows, two shows there at the Capri Theater, and he was not ready for prime time. No question, he was not ready yet to
You
be doing
know?
that. No, no, he was up there, and he definitely was green. You could tell he was green when it came to being a front man.
Wow. It's
So
so hard to imagine Prince as evergreen. I think what a lot of the world's perception of Prince is that because you don't read about him having any formal training, but yet you know that he can play all these instruments, or just how easy and effortless he makes everything look up on stage. What I love about Prince the most is that it harkens back to making me think of like an Elvis Presley, where you don't just go and see a show, you see a performance, costumes, obviously Prince's
right,
legendary dancing and the splits and the tricks with the microphone stand, not to mention his, ridiculously phenomenal guitar playing and all that stuff. It was an actual performance,
yeah,
with all of you guys. And I think that gets lost sometimes with musical acts. It doesn't really translate to the stage.
yeah. But the raw talent was there, but he was still, learning. And even though he'd been in his earlier bands and was, had some experience there, I don't know if he had been quite the front man yet
Right.
before that.
Right.
But I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure about that. Maybe he had some of that experience, but even so, he was on his way, but he still had a lot more to learn. And then even the label people said, that was okay, but you need to do your second album now. So you just keep working with that band and keep working hard and rehearsing with them and come record your next album. And then we'll take it from there. So we had to kind of wait again. So from January of '79, we didn't really get out on the road again until late summer, early fall, I think, to just do clubs around the U.S. We did some what's called showcase clubs, where you're introduced to people for the first
Right.
time in
Right.
smaller venues. So we did that, and then he developed laryngitis about 2/3 of the way through that tour, and several of those last dates, like 4 or 5, had to be canceled because of that. So we ended up not doing, and we didn't go back to those places. And long about November, I believe, that's when his manager managed to get us a slot opening for Rick James, so that we could get more exposure instead of doing these showcase clubs. So that's how the timeline went. And then he really rose to the occasion to open for Rick James, and really garnered quite a reaction from the crowd. And Rick James saw that and said, "Oh, we
Yeah.
got
Uh-oh.
we got this young upstart,
Yeah.
licking at my heels."
Breathing down his neck. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it was, but he just kept growing and growing, and I think he had input from his management team, and maybe even some people that they brought in to help develop his live presence.
Sure, sure.
So
Now, as he starts adding other pieces to the band, are you liking? Obviously, he was very keen on having, harmonizing with female voices. Did you like the finished product when he put the Revolution together? I mean, did you really feel like you guys had captured lightning in a bottle once Mark comes on and Lisa and Wendy? I mean, what did you feel about the end product, the Revolution? Because I mean, in my mind, just a criminally underrated band, and it hadn't really been done really, really well since Sly and the Family Stone. Where you're getting like a multiracial, having both sexes in the band. What did you feel like you guys captured? Like what's your assessment of where the Revolution stands as a band?
well, I thought it was very innovative, and everybody had their strengths and weaknesses as players, but everybody could handle what he threw at us.
Right. Right.
So that was the important thing. None of us, I wouldn't say we were all like amazing
Virtuosos. Right. Right.
fusion jazz players or
Right.
guys like that, but technically we were all very good and more than better than, I mean, just as good as he needed us to be.
Right. Right.
So we could handle it from a technical standpoint.
And now when Prince makes the, what we now know as semi-autobiographical, the movie Purple Rain, and then a couple of years after that, he makes Under the Cherry Moon, which, for me, love the movie, but then there's not much that Prince doesn't do that I don't love, but pretty much panned by critics. What did you feel like, or what's your assessment of the Prince films? And he does have other ones. He's got Sign of the Times and Graffiti Bridge. So I guess encompassing all of them. Are there ones that you thought were, obviously you're gonna have an opinion on? Are there ones that you thought were better or worse? And did you like Prince's foray into the film world?
Yeah, but of course I was concerned about it because he had no training or acting experience going into Purple Rain. So
right.
As much as I thought, okay, he's definitely capable, because I knew his personality, I knew that he could rise to the occasion. It was a little bit worrisome, though. It was a huge risk on the part of whoever invested in the movie,
Sure.
which was his management people, and then they managed to persuade Warner's to kick in some of the money. They didn't want to. They were skeptical of trying to put Prince in a movie. They thought it was too soon. Even though 1999 had gone double platinum at that point, they thought, well, gosh, has he really got a big enough following to take on a movie role with no acting experience? But he wanted to do it. People like Mick Jagger did, and David Bowie.
Right.
He felt like he was on a level with those guys already as an artist, and felt he could take that risk.
Well, it's funny you say he was on that level with the artist because, and it's kind of become a pretty legendary story, but Prince has always been somebody that doesn't seem to lack confidence. Obviously, there's the famous story about, wasn't it his debut album? They wanted the guy from Earth, Wind and Fire to produce it, and Prince really stood his ground on it and insisted that he, that he, so obviously Prince's, brash confidence has certainly never been a problem. He seems ready, willing, and able to tackle things put in front of him.
Yeah, like I said, he definitely had his own vision of what he wanted to do. So that's why he singularly was the mind behind it all. So that's all I can say about that. So I personally thought doing a movie was going to be really cool. I thought he could do it. I thought, and when he came to me and told me about the idea towards the end of the 1999 tour, he sat me down personally and just told me what his plans were. And I said, well, I'm on board with it. That's a pretty lofty ambition on your part at this point in your career to try this, but I'm on board with it if you can make it happen.
Yeah.
That's all I said to him. I fully support the idea. I mean, what are you going to say to the guy? No, I don't want to be in the movie.
I know. And so far, up to this point, he's rolled the dice, and he's made, even though, maybe there's been some pushback or whatever, but he stuck to his guns, though. And up to this point, before Purple Rain is made, I would say so far, he's carving out a very nice career for himself. At this point, he'd already had the early albums out. As you said, he had 1999, which was just starting to really launch his trajectory.
Yeah. And his management believed in him, too. So they were fully behind the movie idea.
Right.
And made it happen. If it wasn't for them, it would have never happened.
Now, I'm not one of these kind of people, and I know that his ex-wife, Maite, has written a book, and other people have written a book, and I'm not into hearing about the dirt and all that kind of stuff, about the man. We've all have obstacles in our life, but how close as a bandmate did you get with Prince on a personal level?
I'd say pretty close.
Because he's a pretty private guy. He's notoriously keeps his circle relatively small. You don't see a lot of pictures of him back when he was alive in the tabloids. There's not a lot out there. He notoriously doesn't do a lot of interviews.
Well, there was a lot of trust between us, I felt. And early on, he he really befriended me and
Okay.
had me hanging out with him more than once in one-on-one situations, whether it be in the studio or just conversations. And he did his best to make you feel welcome and to extend his belief in you, as a player.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was a good thing. And but as time went on and he became more and more famous, I would say probably after Purple Rain came out, that's when, and it took off, that's when he kind of became more aloof.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then yeah, with the group.
Okay.
A
Okay.
bit more like boss employee relationships.
Gotcha.
Not as much socializing as it was in the past.
Do you
But
think that just being around him that he two questions here. Do you think that playing with Prince in the portion of your career that you did, because he was so prolific, did it change you or make you a better musician, do you think?
yeah, definitely.
No question. No question about it. And I also want to ask uh if you look back on what you created with Prince, the albums specifically that you were a part of, uh, is there a song or an album that you're most proud of that you've got your stamp on? That's got Dr. Fink's imprint on it.
Yeah, the song "Dirty Mind," which I
Okay,
had the music was primarily written by me.
an absolute, yeah, an absolute friggin' classic. I mean, it just feels like for that period between like the beginning of his career and about like 1987, 88, it just seemed like everything Prince touched just really turned to gold around that time. I mean, he was just rolling out just genius albums. A lot of the ones, a lot of them even don't even get credit. Sign of the Times, Around the World in a Day, really only spawned the one real big hit, Raspberry Beret, but a phenomenal album. Um, is Prince a genius musically?
Yeah, I would have to put him in that category
Yeah.
for sure.
And with all the times that you jammed with him, obviously we know he can kind of just jump around to different instruments. People probably, I think, know him most prolifically as a guitar player. But you having, as you said, jammed with him, is there an instrument that you think that he's the best at? Is it the guitar?
Oh boy, that's a tough one.
Because
Because
obviously we've seen him jump behind drum kits. We've seen him, we've seen him play some bass. We know he can sit down and tickle the keys on a piano. I mean,
yeah, he seemed to favor the guitar out of all the instruments, but he was prolific on all drums, bass, and guitar and keys. He could tackle whatever he needed to tackle to make his songs, and it was on a high level. He on each instrument, it wasn't like one was weaker than the other. They were all,
right.
to me, equally as proficient.
And as a
For his
musician, how do you explain that? How do you explain that? Because obviously there's a lot of it is mystery with Prince and myth, but we've always been led to believe that Prince didn't have a lot of musical formal training. Now, you as a musician who has mastered your instrument, how do you explain that? How do you explain that?
you can't.
He's
It's
otherworldly.
it's just human talent, human nature, born with the innate talents there, and then being exposed to music early on by his musician father.
Right.
I find that most musicians I know that had musical parents that either taught them music growing up or had musical households, not that were maybe great listeners of music and not necessarily
Right.
musicians, but
Right.
they were given a the ability to hear all different genres of music in their household, and then maybe they took lessons. Their parents said, "Hey, take some piano lessons, we'll help
Right.
you," or take
Right.
some guitar lessons. Are you interested in playing an instrument? Yeah, I
Right.
am. The
Yeah.
kid will say that.
Sure.
So I mean, I know a lot of musicians that didn't come from musical parents who are amazing artists in their own
Sure.
right,
Sure.
but I
Sure.
found that the ones that grew up with professional musician parents or musically inclined, even, I found that they seem to have the head start that gave them a lot of proficiency by the time they're in their teen years.
Sure.
That's all I mean by that. So,
and what was it for you? What was it for you personally? Because I don't want to just make it all about Prince. How do you, how do you dive into the music world? What was your first foray into it? Was there an instrument that you kind of, that you took to, an instrument that you may have tried first and gave up on? How did you arrive at playing a musical instrument?
Well, my father and my mom both played piano, but not proficiently. They did it for fun growing up a little bit. My dad was never formally taught, but he liked to sit down and noodle on the piano. My mom had a little bit of classical piano growing up and could, remember a few things from her childhood and play them. And she liked to play the ukulele and introduced me to that. But they gave me a wide range of cultural experiences growing up because they both had degrees in the theater. So when they went to college, they met in college at the University of Minnesota. They were both studying theater, and they rubbed elbows with other actors that later went to Hollywood and made it big and stuff like that. They chose to stay here for whatever reason, and did local theater, local TV commercials, local voiceover, radio spots. My mom even had a talent agency at one time that booked actors for that kind of work. And so they were both in the AFTRA union, the American Federation of Television Radio Artists, and they were constantly active locally, whether it be on the board of directors of certain local theaters or performing in plays, whatever. So they were that side of the coin. So I was exposed to theater, and I acted a bit when I was a kid and did some voiceover work too at their behest for educational recordings, because they knew people that were in that business, and they said, "Hey, we got this kid. He can do this. Bring him in to act." So I did some of that kind of work. I even had a radio show when I was 14 at the University of Minnesota's radio station called Happy, Healthy, and Safe, that my father found for me because he used to work at the radio station when he went to college.
Nice.
So the scripts were written. There was a real doctor that I would interview. I'd go in there once a month and do like 4 half-hour shows, and they would go over the air to schools across the Twin Cities with health topics, and I would interview the same doctor. And
that's cool.
Each thing.
Yeah.
So I was 14. I did that for about a year or so, and I didn't get paid really much, but it was for fun. And
so when Purple Rain comes around, you're like, movies, piece of cake.
Yeah. I had quite a bit of acting experience.
Yeah.
I when I was in junior high, I had a leading role in a play at our school and the main lead for the play. And then by the time I was in high school, though, by that time I was in a band. The band started in my 7th grade year. And we were already playing local gigs around town, and mainly junior high and high school dances, because we were too young to play clubs.
Right.
But by when I was 16, though, the summer of when I was 16, still in my just getting past my 10th grade year, I worked with a bunch of older guys locally at a club north of the Twin Cities every weekend at this place out on a lake somewhere, like about an hour north of the cities. We were the house band. So I actually, they took on the name of my junior high school band, which we had retired. And I played with them that whole summer at the age of 16. These guys were all in their mid to late 20s.
Wow. So
and they didn't, the owner of the bar didn't know I was 16 at the time. I had a fake ID, and they just ignored the fact that I was young looking.
So it's pretty safe to say by the time you link up with Prince, you're a pretty seasoned performer.
Pretty seasoned musician, player, yeah, and had some acting experience under my belt. So that was all there. And I had been recording a little bit with some people, doing session work by the time I joined Prince. So original music wasn't out of my realm of possibilities at all. So, but yeah, that's how I got my start, because my parents just said, "Hey, you want to take piano? Your older brother, we got him taking piano lessons. You want to try it?" And I go, "Okay." So I was about 7, I think, 6.5, 7 at the time. So that's how I got my start playing the piano. And And then when I was around 14, I went to my folks. I said, hey, I want to change teachers and go to this one jazz guy in town so I can learn improvisational aspects of piano playing and jazz and stuff like that. So they said, okay. And, from the time I was about 14 through my senior year of high school, I was working with that guy.
So obviously, a lot of parents aren't going to be over the moon. Taking an instrument in school is one thing, but a full-on foray into the entertainment world is not going to always necessarily make a lot of parents happy. It sounds like you had pretty supportive parents.
I did.
Yeah, so they were fine with you being, pursuing being a full-time musician.
Yes, but they also wanted me to go to music college. They said they wanted me to do all that and go to Juilliard or Berkeley in Boston or something like that. But I was playing around town, and by the time like I said, I was 20 at the time, and had the audition for Prince. If the audition for Prince hadn't gone well, I probably may have gone to music school at that point.
Now, it's very hard. Obviously, we just built Prince up as a genius, which we both agree that he was. But were there ever any moves? And not that maybe you didn't even mention him to him, but were there songs, projects, things that he ever did where you thought, and I'm not going to say anything, but this might be a misstep?
Yeah, Graffiti Bridge was a little iffy for me because he wanted me to watch the dailies one day, like the film that they had done.
Yep.
And at the time I was with my future wife, and both of us went in there to look at the dailies, and we watched it, and then I had to kind of say, yeah. He goes, what do you think? And I had to kind of go, yeah, that looks okay, I guess, but I was not feeling it. There was something funny about it. And he had created this set at Paisley Park in the soundstage, which was like a very fake, like almost looked like an old timey movie musical from the 40s and 50s, like where it looks cartoony, because the bridge itself, the Graffiti Bridge, and then the places where they film, it was all done in interiors. There was nothing really done outdoors. It was all done on the soundstage, so it looked like a place, the set of a play.
Yeah,
that they put this musical and story into, and of course the storyline was a bit odd to me. I didn't fully understand it, and the Ingrid Chavez character and all that. So we went to the premiere of the film, and it fell flat, unfortunately for him. That one was not. I mean, granted, Under the Cherry Moon, I felt was very entertaining, and okay, so they panned it a bit, and the critics, and it was Prince's first try at directing a film himself. He insisted on directing it, which I don't know if that was a great idea for him to be doing that.
Yeah,
but that's his wanting to learn and do that. So I understand that. Sometimes hubris can get in the way of things.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
So, his confidence level is so high that, I can do anything, and that's fine, but be careful and know what your limits are. So maybe those two films, they had
I may
issues.
be in the minority here, and it might be a very polarizing opinion, as is the Under the Cherry Moon movie, very polarizing. I love it. I love it.
I loved that Cherry Moon too. I did.
Yeah.
I watched it recently. I was
Me
highly
too.
entertained by it.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with it at all. But Graffiti Bridge, a little bit. That was a little funny.
And I think part of what I really love about Under the Cherry Moon, though, is that the Parade album in and of itself happens to be, one of my favorite Prince albums. I like the aesthetic. I like that the film is shot in black and white. I feel like it transports me, which I think great music has the ability to do. It transports me almost to, like the setting of that movie. It really does something. The songs on that album just hit me a certain way where it has a very like an old soul type of feeling to it.
Right.
I don't know what it is about that album, but I love, just great tracks in there. I love Christopher Tracy's Parade, Girls and Boys, Mountains. Obviously, Kiss became a huge, huge hit for Prince. But I want to ask, though, speaking of hits, Prince notoriously wrote hits and gave them away to other artists. And obviously, Manic Monday for the Bangles, Nothing Compares to You became Sinead O'Connor's signature tune. Were there ever any of these songs that you thought, God, man, these are such great songs, you should keep them for yourself?
No,
No,
because he knew what was not necessarily for him, and
right.
would fit better with those other artists.
But I gotta say, I love his version of Manic Monday, though. Love it.
Yeah, it's good. It's good, but when you hear the Bangles version, you go, that's not really something Prince should have done anyway for himself.
Right.
It doesn't fit his thing, but his vibe. But yeah, it's really cool. Sure, great. He did a great version of it himself. But again, it worked better for the Bangles.
Where are you for me, I mean, like not being around when, being alive when Kennedy was shot, or, being a toddler when Elvis died. I don't have memories of that, but a lot of people do recall where they were when certain monumental things happened. Where are you, and what's the feeling that hits you when you find out about Prince's untimely passing?
Oh, it was like getting kicked in the gut. It was like I was so in shock I couldn't function the rest of the day.
Yeah.
It was like losing a family member.
Yeah. How much contact had you had with him in recent years, up until his passing?
I had fairly regular contacts with him throughout the time I left, and even up in the last really good meeting I had with him was like in late 2014. So only a couple years before he passed. I'd seen him face to face.
Was there ever any talk about reuniting from a work standpoint?
Yes. Yeah, there was.
Yes. So you guys were had done stuff, or were hopefully planning on doing stuff?
Just he was bandying the idea about it, that last meeting we had.
I don't know if Prince strikes me as like a nostalgic type, but obviously you see a lot of these people who come back around, a lot of it for money, a lot of it because, like I said, people like nostalgia. But do you think, had Prince, or if Prince were still with us, do you think we would ever see Prince and the Revolution reformed?
Yeah, I think you would have seen it.
Yes.
Yeah.
God damn it. That makes me upset, Dr. Fink.
Makes me upset too.
I know, man. Well, because I am I am a, what you'd call for sure, a super fan. But the other side of that coin is I never got to see Prince. No matter what band or in what stage of his career, never got to see him live. And I will kick myself for it forever. But you guys have gone on to keep the spirit of the music alive, and you still continue to do live shows with the Revolution. How has that been when, your band leader, the icon, is not there in the front of the stage? You still love playing with the guys, and the girls?
Of course. But yeah, it's definitely an odd situation.
Yeah.
It's no different than Freddie Mercury or and anybody where bands reunite without their singer, whether they're alive or not, because you've got all kinds of groups out there these days that they're mad at each other and then they go out and do different versions of the band. The Revolution's never had that problem. We all get along like a family, a good family, and we're still friends, and there's never been any issues.
Is the legendary Paisley Park vault that's been bandied about unreleased material? You obviously created with Prince. Do you believe or know for a fact that there are archives of unreleased fantastic songs and do you think these songs will be released by the Prince estate, and we will continue to hear new Prince music for years to come?
Probably.
Yeah.
I'd say probably. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the gift that keeps giving. I mean, Prince is just going to continue to give to us even from the beyond.
Yeah. I think they'll continue to put things out there.
I think what shocked me the most, Matt, was that, and you know, I myself have struggled in the past. I'll be perfectly candid about that, with addiction. Know plenty of people that have, lost plenty of people that have. Prince, what really surprised me was that Prince just struck me as somebody that was so otherworldly that he almost seemed invincible to me. He almost seemed invincible, and I know that's a crazy thing for an adult man to be saying about another adult, because obviously we know nobody is invincible. But did you really, you said you had conversations with him and kept up with him. Did you know anything about, personally, that was plaguing his life? Were you keyed into any of these problems and difficulties that struggles he was going through?
No, just a little bit of, people over the years saying, oh, well, he's had hip issues, and okay, he's having some problems with, I heard he'd had some issues with painkillers at one point from other people in his camp, but never to the level where they were saying, oh, he's full on addicted and there's got to be an intervention here.
Right.
So when all that happened, it was shocking. But then again, I went, oh, okay, there were hints at this in the past that I've heard about, things where he was using.
Yeah.
So that's all I can say about it. And yeah. So and even the people around him now who worked with him have said to me, he kept it hidden. We really didn't know to the extent that he was doing this.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, obviously, back in the 80s, when he was putting out, albums, like the aforementioned 1999, Purple Rain had Darling Nikki on it. He took a lot of flack for overtly risque sexual stuff. Do you think that in any way hurt or tarnished his image back then when he's being, placed up against the, well, I don't want to say, the pop stars of the 80s, because some of them were risque, but his main rivalry back then was Michael Jackson, who seemed to have a little bit more of a wholesome, squeaky ear, king of pop, this beloved child star who's now become an adult, beloved by, the whole world. It seemed like him and Prince kind of had I don't know what their personal relationship was, that, that's certainly been bandied about in the press or whatever. But do you think any of his material in the public's eye and in the image of him, hurt him because he towed that line of I don't want to say vulgarity, because it's obviously it's art, and he walked that tightrope very, very well. But do you think it hurt his image at all?
Maybe only in certain people who may have found a dislike for that, or how some people are they're brought up and they're taught that can be a sin, to be overtly sexual like that. So yeah, there were probably some people that felt that way. It may have cut back a little bit on his fan base because of those topics, but not enough to where it, wrecked his career. Obviously.
I mean, no.
Yeah.
And now he obviously liked playing into the whole androgynous thing, singing with the high falsetto voice. He was obviously somebody very in touch with his feminine side, so to speak. Where did that come from? Was that always there?
I guess, I've heard from people that worked with him, and when he was first, learning to be in a studio and work with a studio, that some of his mentors, or one in particular I know personally, I won't name names, he said that Prince was extremely shy in the studio in the beginning, and had to really work hard to get him to sing properly, and to not be afraid to sing in the studio.
So,
stuff like that.
In your personal dealings with him, did you find him to be, in conversations and stuff? I mean, like, what was he like when you had? Because he obviously was very private, and you could definitely tell that he was, very shy. Did you see that a lot in your personal dealings with him and his personal dealings with the band? No, he could drop the hammer and he could play the boss.
Yeah,
and he had no qualms about that.
Yeah, but he also was a lot of fun to be around.
I bet. Yeah.
He had a gregarious sense of humor and nature about him that was infectious, and you like to pal around and joke around with him because he was so clever.
Yeah.
Very, very clever sense of humor, and kind of a practical joker at heart as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have read and heard stuff, and any book that comes out, anybody who writes anything about him, I just like to absorb it. I like to hear the stories.
Yeah.
Um,
No, in fact, don't mean to interrupt, but
sure, no, please.
I always felt that he and Eddie Murphy, who was a huge fan, we got to know Eddie quite well. He used to come to shows all the time and hang out with us backstage. I always felt that he and Eddie should have done a buddy comedy movie together. They would have been hilarious. It would have been hilarious. It would have been absolutely over the top.
That's
funny.
the movie that the world needed right there.
They did, but I guess it didn't happen. But obviously, but any kind of comedy, Prince should have. Well, Under the Cherry Moon had some comedic moments.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah. And I think him and Jerome played very well off of each other.
Yeah, so he has that ability, and he should have. There should have been more of it. That's all I'm saying.
When people talk about the legendary, obviously the First Avenue Club, the Minneapolis sound, was that there before Prince? Was there a Minneapolis sound, or did Prince and his band, do you guys collectively, whatever, did you guys create the Minneapolis sound? And if it was there beforehand, who does get credit for it?
Well, boy, I suppose the Prince experience / time, Vanity 6, those early years, which really brought all the attention to Minneapolis. The movie obviously brought all that added attention to the Minneapolis music scene. However, prior to Prince, there were other artists that had garnered some attention. The song Funky Town was a hit before Prince got to be well known.
Yeah.
That came out of here with Stevie Greenberg wrote that. That's that song. You still hear it today in movies and commercials. I mean, it's just huge. And they made a big footprint on that one. And then prior to that, you had Husker Du and the Replacements, and the Trashmen had a big hit in the early 60s with Surfin' Bird, or the Bird is the Word. That was a big radio hit. And there were a couple other groups like the Castaways and the High Spirits. They had those names in the early to mid 60s that had some national radio hits.
Okay.
And it's funny that, the band, the High Spirits, was actually Owen Husney and David Rivkin were both in that. David Z were in that band and had a hit song called Turn On Your Love Light or something like that. So they had some national recognition, nothing huge, and I'm sure I'm missing some other people along the way, and I can't remember all of them. But
it's like an Academy Award speech, Matt. You're gonna forget somebody.
But there is a Minnesota Rock Hall of Fame, and then you can go in there and probably find all kinds of stuff that took place over the years with Minneapolis artists.
Now, I heard Prince say on an Oprah Winfrey interview when she posed this question to him, but I'm interested to get your take or maybe something you picked up on in a conversation with him. But when he was asked by Oprah, why Minneapolis? You've made a lot of money. You could keep a home here, but why stay here as much as you do? And he did kind of make a reference, and I'm paraphrasing, that, the cold keeps all the bad people, all the idiots, whatever, out. But, did he ever give you any more of a reason as to why he kept his roots and in Minneapolis and built Paisley Park there and really seemed to, and I'm sure he had homes in other places, but to not, like you said earlier in the interview, to not go to LA, to not go to New York. What was it about Minneapolis? Because obviously he's got a lot of good memories there, but there were parts of his childhood and his upbringing that obviously were very painful, where he might want to escape that area as well. So it is kind of twofold. But what was his real reason for staying there?
He never verbalized it to me ever. No, he never said, "Hey, I'm staying here because of this." I think he, in my mind, and I'm speculating here, he just wanted to help the Midwest and the Twin Cities in particular to grow into something like a Nashville or an LA or New York too, or even Chicago, which had some
growing scene there.
You keep the scene growing and put a national spotlight on the talent here, because there's so much great talent in this area as well.
Yeah.
So
And there continues to be a pretty burgeoning
yeah,
music scene there.
absolutely. Yeah.
So
Yep.
and let me ask you this too. Obviously, there will never, ever be. He's a generational talent, Prince. But people always kind of banter back and forth about who takes the reins, who could potentially be emerge as like another Prince type. We've seen guys like D'Angelo, or we have Bruno Mars now. But will anybody ever, and certainly no one's going to be Prince, but are there other guys who you see out there in the music scene right now who you say, okay, that's a guy who's doing it right and getting pretty close?
No, I don't. No, but I will say, and I'm a little biased here, that my oldest son Max, who's now out in LA being a producer and artist, he's highly prolific and has written some great material and is getting some attention by some pretty significant people in the industry out there. So I think he's got a handle on some things, with the current sound. His stage name is Max Milli, spelled MBXMILLI.
Okay.
And you can check him out. He's got some interesting material, and he's kind of in that Post Malone space.
Okay.
I would liken him to be in that realm of pop music. He doesn't sound like Post, because everybody's an individual, but I think he has created some very entertaining material these days. And he's working with some people out there, and he's getting in circles with some more successful artists, and making
so what do
some
you make
headway.
of the music business now, though? Music business obviously drastically different, drastically changed since your time, in Prince and the Revolution. A lot of digitalized technology has taken over. Do you see technology? Because I talked to a lot of musicians on here, and it's obviously put a huge crimp in their ability to sell albums and to make money. Ultimately, has technology been good for music, or has it been more of a detriment?
I think the streaming technology has been difficult. I think it's been not as healthy for artists to make money, obviously, and they're trying to remedy that. There are negotiations that are still in the works with the labels and everybody in the streaming services, so that the artists can get a bigger piece of the pie, their percentages, and there is some things coming in down the pike that's going to change for artists, in my opinion.
Good.
It's tricky though. It's a fine line. The major labels very rarely will give an artist a lot of money up front like they used to get their careers going.
Those days seem to be long gone.
To be gone. I mean, they may spend money on promotion side of things, but there may not be a budget to go in the studio. There may not be a budget for tour support. There may be a budget to make a video. There may be the budget to, have a person working with them and doing major social media advertising.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where things are at. Like, you're on TikTok, you're on Instagram, you're on Facebook, you're on whatever, Snapchat. You're putting stuff out there on all these platforms constantly, and you're putting a single out because it's a singles driven market. You're not really putting whole albums out so much anymore, as you're just putting out singles and timing those singles to come out every couple months,
Right.
So if you can get the streams that are in the millions, and there are a lot of artists that do that, there is some money to be had from streaming, but your merchandising and your touring are going to be the other 2/3 of your pie.
Yeah.
And that's how it is. You just got to get out and play live and promote yourself and do the best you can in that side of the business.
What did you think, speaking of the business side of it, what did you think from a spectator, from, I don't know how much talking to him, obviously you said you kept in touch with him or whatever. from reading stuff, I get what he was thinking. I get why he approached it the way he did. But what did you think when Prince went through his famous period where he was just known as the symbol? Obviously, we know that it was a boycott and, you know, in some respects, and some pushback towards his relationship with contractual stuff and stuff with the label or whatever. But do you think he went about it the best way that he could? And I mean, it seemed like he went against it in typical Prince fashion, where it kept a lot of people scratching their heads and saying, "What do we call this guy now?" Yeah, you know what I mean? A confusing time, you know, for some Prince fans or whatever. But what did you think of when he approached his protest of his contract that way?
I found it to be. I'm not sure I agreed with it right off the bat. Later on, I understood. It took me a while to really, you know, after watching interviews and him discuss how he had been treated and how other artists are treated with their deals. I thought, okay, when you first sign a deal with a big label like Warner Brothers, they're fronting you money. You're going to the bank and taking out a loan, and then you have to pay that back, unfortunately. But that's how it works. Yeah, you have to recoup that, and then hopefully make a profit over and above that, which he fortunately did over the years with Warner Brothers. But with that said, he probably felt over time that deal needed to be revised because he didn't think it was fair anymore.
Right.
And of course, these label people aren't going to budge much. They don't want to change the deal because it's a money-driven situation.
Absolutely.
So he felt he had to draw attention to it by writing "slave" on his face and doing all the things that he did to shine a light on himself and other artists who deal with these, what you may call, lopsided record deals.
Right.
But in the beginning, you have to play the game because you got that big engine, that big company is behind you, you know, with your promotion team. It's all part and parcel to what you have to do to become successful in that industry. So I thought, okay, Prince, you do deserve a renegotiation for your deal. No question. So that was my only, I mean, I understood it from that aspect, and whether he I think eventually he did get an okay situation, a better one. I think he went to at one point Sony gave him some kind of big deal, but even that was, you know, he had to show he could sell the product, and I don't think it did enough to where it satisfied Sony either at that point. So it's a fine line. It's a very controversial and difficult situation for everybody involved to make things fair for the artist. But go ahead.
Yeah. Now we've heard stuff about you know, well, obviously it played out in the movie Purple Rain, and then its sequel, which we talked about, Graffiti Bridge. But what was his, you know, because this is a band and an artist that got a lot of comparisons, and I don't think people knew if they were on the same page or if it was a legit rivalry. But where did Prince stand with Morris Day in the time? I know he helped them create a lot of music, but ultimately, you know, did ego get involved? You know, was Morris envious of where Prince was, or did they have a good relationship?
I haven't read Morris's book yet, so
no, I haven't either. No, I haven't either.
But some people told me that Prince had a bit of a rivalry with him, and in spite of, he like created Frankenstein's monster when he created at the time, you know.
Yeah.
So we're out on tour, and the time kicked our ass, you know, a lot. They really did.
Now, when you say kicked your ass, though, what does that mean? You thought that they opened for you guys and upstaged you and were better?
Yeah, all the above. Sure, he could feel that. He could feel that their response was even greater than what we were getting. It's kind of like the Prince and Rick James situation all over again in some ways. Not that we, you know, we did well, we were fine, but there was a certain energy to that show that was different from the Revolution stuff, you know. So I think that affected him from an ego standpoint. When he said, "Oh my God, look what I've done! I created this monster," and they're just, you know, messing with me. So there was some of that, and I heard secondhand reports that Prince did some things that weren't so nice to Morris.
Yeah,
that's all I can say. I don't know details.
Plead the fifth. Plead the when all else fails. Plead the fifth. Here's kind of a loaded question. That I'd like to wrap things up with. If somebody right now had never heard Prince, and you were going to introduce them to Prince with just one song where you think his signature sound and what he encompasses is, what would the song be that you would point to and say, here's a jumping off point?
Boy, that's a
And he's
tough
got a lot.
question.
He's got a lot. I mean, I'll be the first to admit, as a super fan, you know what I mean? Like, what I want to hear from him really varies day to day. And I have been on the fence myself. It's very hard to point to and say, this is my favorite Prince song definitively.
Well, I don't have a favorite. I have like a top 10.
Okay.
Or 5,
Throw a few of those out there.
Lady Cab Driver from 1999 album. Really
Phenomenal.
cool song.
Phenomenal.
I always cite that one just because it's so unique, and the subject matter is very empowering, woman empowering.
Yes.
Agreed. Which I thought was cool. So that, and then in When Doves Cry, very innovative piece of music.
Very.
Where the drums drive the song. There's no bass guitar on it. There's no bass part on it other than the kick drum. So it's very innovative. And then as you move forward into his catalog, probably the song "Sign of the Times," things like that.
A remarkable song in a lot of ways, because it seemed like, even though that was circa like 87, somewhere around there, he seemed to really be tapped into problems and almost from a prophetic standpoint, seeing things that are coming on down the line when he's talking about, the crack epidemic and AIDS was just kind of becoming very prevalent around that time. It seemed like Prince was very in tune to a lot of things, and certainly had a lot of vision as the things that were coming on down the pike.
But he didn't like talking politics with me at all.
No, I wouldn't imagine. No, I wouldn't
imagine. Didn't want to talk politics ever.
Now, one song that comes up with me a lot that I absolutely love, and it is a deeper track. Whereas, I mean, it probably shouldn't be such a deep track, because he, for God's sake, he named his studio and his palace after it. But I love the song Paisley Park.
Yeah, it's a cool song too, and it's a vision of a different world, a happier place, a utopian kind of vision of living in peace in the world too, which he wanted. He wanted people to, no matter who you were ethnically or wherever you came from, he wanted people to be treated fairly and equally, and that was his message.
Now, knowing Prince the way you did, and I think, because of all the aforementioned things that we talked about, his gregariousness, his sense of humor, his fun-loving spirit, his prankish manner, I think that he would have made an absolutely phenomenal father when he, like when he publicly, when it was publicly discovered, that he lost the child with Maite. Knowing him the way you do, whether or not you had a conversation with him or not, how much do you think that really took out of him? Just completely gutted him. A lot of people really say that really, really, really was a monumental, shift as far as like what it did to Prince internally. And I'm not saying it wouldn't for anybody, because obviously it would.
I can totally relate to that, because my wife and I lost our first child to a stillbirth due to something happened with a food poisoning issue that my wife had, and
I'm sorry to hear that.
And it took our first child out late in the pregnancy. It was very, very difficult.
Was parenthood something that Prince ever keyed in on with you? That was like a dream of his, or an endeavor that he wanted to undertake? Did he ever talk fatherhood?
No, he did not. He never talked about that with me. But it was obvious that I'm sure it hurt him deeply, and I don't know if he's got other kids out there, but maybe he does that we don't know about.
So what's next for all of you guys? Will we continue to see the Revolution going out and playing, these individual dates, here and there?
Yeah, we're keeping it open. We're just open to whatever makes sense. Wendy and Lisa are headlong into a couple of projects in LA right now, as I am here in the Twin Cities.
Okay.
So getting out in touring is not in the cards for this year, or maybe even into early or first 6 months of next year. But if things make sense, and because it in order to make our thing work properly, we're very highly professional, and it takes a certain amount of money to make it work properly.
Absolutely.
So that's the main thing. And coming out of the pandemic, promoters and stuff are being skittish about money right now. So the offers that we require to make it work properly have to be in the right place, and they're not quite there yet. And even if they were, we probably couldn't get out there anyway at this time due to our schedules. But 2024 looks really good for the 40th anniversary of Purple Rain.
Yes. Yeah. That's a monumental year.
And I would say that, God willing, we may do some things around that time.
Well, that will definitely be music to the ears of Prince fans. Now, I'm curious, when you guys go out and do these shows, though, who does act as the vocalist?
We've had a guy by the name of, Stokely Williams, who is the leader of the band Mint Condition, which was produced by Jam and Lewis back in the day.
Okay.
And we had him on the road with us doing all the shows. He would do, about, I'd say 2/3 of the songs, and then the other third were split between Wendy and Mark for vocals. But yeah, that's how we manage those things.
And what about other side projects and endeavors? Like, where can people find you? What are you working on out there? Aside from anything Prince related.
Well, I'm easily, findable on Facebook Messenger or Instagram Messenger. I do have a direct email, which is drfink1981 @gmail.
Okay.
Spelled D. It's dr period, so dr period fink 1981 @gmail.com.
And you're keeping yourself busy out there with musical endeavors yourself?
Yeah, I'm in my studio right now.
Nice.
You can kind of
in the lab working in the lab.
Yeah, in the lab. But I'm on a couple different projects at the moment with some people.
And will you be releasing music, or are these more live endeavors?
These are just people's album projects that I'm a session player for. That's all.
Gotcha.
Nothing
Well, listen,
major.
man, I could literally sit here, Doctor, and pick your brain all day about Prince stuff, and probably never let you off my computer. I would never let you leave. If you were here right now, I'd probably keep you hostage and just rip every ounce of Prince wealth of knowledge that you have, because he will always be it for me. And I by design usually grew up and have continued to be more of a me and my friends laugh about this. We more grew up a hard rock, heavy metal bunch of kids, but Prince was always like that guy that just got a pass. You could outright say that you love Prince and you love his music, and your metalhead and rock friends wouldn't fucking rip on you for it. You know what I mean? Like,
well,
Prince
that's good.
Transcends. He transcends. He gets a pass always, man, because he is the coolest performer that ever lived, in my mind.
Yeah, he is. No question.
And he always will be. And just to look at your face and just be able to spend a little bit of time with you when you're such, and I'll be the first to admit, I've lost a lot of musicians along the way that have helped form the soundtrack of my life, but nobody ever brought me to tears when they passed except for Prince. I really felt like, as you said earlier, like you lost a member of the family,
Yeah.
It hit me very, very, very hard, and I just, I didn't want to believe that it could be possible. As I said earlier, it almost seemed like it's funny. If I could just share with you really quick, I had an interview on here with Frank Benbini. Now, he is the drummer for a band called the Fun Loving Criminals, and he got a chance to meet Prince backstage when he went to see him, and I was very jealous because he said he's seen him like 30 or 40 times. But but he said when he was near him, and I understood what he meant by this in some weird way, but he said just being a couple feet away from him, it almost seemed like, and I think I spoke about this earlier in the interview, where he almost gave off an aura of like being an otherworldly, like he just had like a glow about him. I mean, like almost like you could just tell that you were just in the presence of somebody that was just, you know, a phenomenal talent and almost like not even cut from the cloth that the rest of us are. And I don't want to put him up on a pedestal with some hokey bullshit like, you know, he's a god or anything like that, obviously. But he has that presence, though. And especially for such a small, diminutive guy, he just seems like he's like the biggest guy in any room he's in.
Yeah, I can't explain him. He's an enigma.
He's an enigma. He is. He's an enigma. Yeah, and you know, probably some stuff about his life is probably, you know, probably better left a mystery, because I think it keeps that aura and that otherworldliness alive. You know what I mean? And I want it to be alive.
Yeah, yeah. No, he was very good at keeping a mystery around him.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
Well, listen, I just want to thank you personally for the years of great music, man. And just, you know, Prince and the Revolution will just always be it for me. You know, that's not to slight the new power generation or, you know, any other stuff or incarnations of bands that he had. But you know, you guys are it for me, man. And I really hope that you do get out there, because even just getting to see you guys would make it feel like that's as close as I can get now, you know, to seeing the genuine article. So, you know, I'm keeping fingers crossed for 2024. And I thank you so much for coming on here.
You're welcome. And hopefully there'll be something next year. You never know.
Yeah.
There'll be some dates, you know. But I'm getting out and playing. I'm still getting out and playing these days with a few groups. And I don't know if you know who Paul Peterson is from the original Family. Do you know who he was? Remember the band, The Family?
If you're telling me, I'm getting off here immediately.
Well, look up The Family. Prince put an album out called The Family with these people back in '86, and it didn't really take off because Paul decided to leave the group early on. But he's got a thing right now called St. Paul and the Minneapolis Funk All Stars, and it's comprised of various Prince alumni people. I just did 3 shows with him recently because I was filling in for his nephew, Jason Peterson, who tours with Michael Bolton when Bolton needs him. So he's out touring with Bolton, and Paul asked me if I would fill in, and I said sure, sounds like fun. So I'm doing some of those.
Awesome.
And I'm doing a couple of other local things here, and I filled in for Tommy Barbarella recently for a group that Michael Bland is the leader of called Urban Classic, which is just playing old R&B hits at local venues. So
it really is a family. It all kind of stays. It all kind of comes full circle.
We're all friends. We're all friends, and I'm just out there getting out to play after, you know, a long time in hibernation during COVID and wanting to get out and play.
How did COVID treat you in the family? Did anybody get sick or?
My son in LA got it a couple times. Most of the people I know have had it. My wife and I avoided it completely until fairly recently. We both came down with it. But we were vaccinated, so it was mild. It was mild.
And I'm glad that you said you're vaccinated, because working in healthcare and seeing, you know, it being, you know, I think what happened was a lot of people's political views got in the way, you know, of the science of it. And they kind of just adapted this attitude of, well, I'm not doing anything that the government's telling me to get or whatever. And I think people started to look too much into the conspiracy aspect of it and not really look at the science and the health benefits to it. You know,
it's a shame. There's too much misinformation.
There is.
And someone the other day, just yesterday, just a complete stranger, we were standing in line, and this topic came up. I can't remember how, and this person said, well, my son's been doing research, and I got it early on and before the vaccines, and I got over it. She's an older lady. And I haven't gotten the vaccine yet because my son's research is telling him that people who get vaccinated get sick with it anyway, and that they tend to get it more often than the people who aren't vaccinated. So in other words, there's something about the vaccine. She said the vaccine is messing with our immune systems and making it easier for the virus to get you sick. And I went, really?
Yeah.
That's an interesting theory.
Yeah, and you can talk to your blue in the face to try to change those people, but you can't. But to a certain extent, you know what I mean? Like even when you get the flu shot, you are getting a certain amount of the virus introduced to you. It's how antibodies work, you know? I mean,
Yeah, and the problem is that because their variants are out there, the vaccines aren't 100% effective against those, although they do help you fight it off better and have a less severe case. So that's what people tend to forget. They don't understand that. And even with the flu vaccine, they usually only, if you're lucky, you get a 60% efficacy every year if you're lucky.
Right.
And that if you're vaccinated, it'll help you fight it better than
right.
not.
I think a lot of people just think I can't get the flu now. Even if you did contract it, you would just hopefully get a less severe case.
Exactly,
you know what I mean?
exactly.
You know,
And sometimes the immune system, because of the vaccine, will be it was the right vaccine for that flu virus, and it will
right.
fight it off without you getting sick at all.
Right. And what a lot of people don't know too
So
is that there could be like, like 20 different strains of the flu out, and they're just looking at numbers and saying, geez, these are the top 2 or 3 that we're going to try to vaccinate people against. And you might get some strain that just didn't happen to be in the vaccine, but I mean, it's a numbers game, but there's just no way in hell just to, give you an ironclad guarantee that we're going to give you the shot and you're not going to get sick all winter. I mean,
just the messaging, I felt like the messaging has been, they've done the best they could from the health professionals out there. They tried their best to fight against the misinformation that was, going on. And it's tough, because there are anti-vaxxers out there who are propagated by people like Robert Kennedy Jr. of all people, who believe that vaccines are causing autism. So, just where's the proof? Show us the data.
Right. Crunch some numbers.
Let's just see where it's at, and if that's true, then that's a tragedy if it is true. And if vaccines are causing autism. So it's hard, I don't know what to think about it. It's like, get your research done and get it out there and get the truth as best you can.
I've resigned myself to the fact that probably in my career, the mask now has become like such a part of the uniform that I just don't foresee it coming off anytime soon. But obviously when we were all masking up, I mean, you're the freaking doctor. It must have been a piece of cake for you.
Yeah, no problem. But question,
did you
get COVID before the vaccines came out? Because you're a healthcare worker?
I did. Yes, I did. Yep.
How did you do? How did you do with it?
I felt like I just had, for like 2 or 3 days, I just felt like I just had a mild cold. But, I was, in my late 40s. The people that are really in danger, I'm a nurse and I work in a nursing home. The geriatric population over 65, obviously they're a lot more compromised, or people that are young that have a lot of comorbidities. You know what I mean? So if you're somebody like 45, but you've got bad diabetes or kidney disease or heart disease, you're at certainly much more of a risk. I mean, as we get older, we all get health problems, you know what I mean? But how much COVID is going to impinge or affect those, it really differs from person to person. But obviously people over 65 who get the flu can die from it. You know what I mean? It compromises the respiratory system, very, very bad. Anything that affects breathing, which COVID in its worst form can certainly do a lot of damage to the respiratory system.
Exactly.
It's just about, it's really just trying not to let things get that much of a foothold on you at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
Yep.
If you can stay out of it now, but just to shift gears really quick before you go, we just talked about reading Morris's book, which I think I am going to go get the audio book and listen to it. As an ex-member of the Revolution, well, you're still a member of the Revolution, but is there ever a book in Matt Fink's future?
I think so.
Yeah, writing about the tales and the escapades of being a bandmate of Prince.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so, but not at the moment. Nothing.
Now's not the time.
No.
Yeah, I mean, because nowadays everybody's writing a book, and it seems
There's
like
too many of them.
It seems hilarious. Yeah. I think it's best to wait until the thing dies down, because even though Prince passed away, unfortunately, in 2016, 6 years later, and we're still, getting, books from, people that thought they knew him really good, or, obviously his wife, who did know him really well. Obviously, she wrote a book or whatever. But I think it'd be nice if it dies down, and then all of a sudden, you come back out of left field with, oh, hey, look, another perspective on Prince. And I think you could certainly speak from, a a different angle. You know what I mean? Being a
Yeah.
bandmate, being as somebody that created with him, being as someone who was a friend, who had, individual, dealings with him. I think it'd be a fascinating read. I mean, it would be fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. Eventually. I don't know when yet, though.
So you will be a doctor of literature here pretty soon. I hope.
Yeah.
God willing. Listen, man, I mean, it was awesome talking to you, man. Love you to death, man. Thanks so much for the years of music, man. And, God bless you and the family, man. And just, continue. Oh, I lost you. Where'd you go?
I don't know. I'm still here.
Oh, there you are. There you are. There. You just lost your camera for a minute. But,
Weird. Okay.
I appreciate you coming on here. Thanks so much. The great doctor. And yes, you are a legend, my friend. You're a legend.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for being so generous with your time, man. And I wish you all the best.
Okay. Thanks a lot. You take care.
I salute you, sir. Thank you.
Yep.
Have a good one, Matt. Thank you.
You too.
All right. God bless.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That's a bona fide legend. Fuck if you don't think so. Double hockey sticks, double kickstands, double whatever you want to call them. That right there is Matt Dr. Fink, a man who played the keyboards, wrote songs, produced, worked right alongside with the man himself. The only man. Right there. That is the king of the music business / entertainment / anything. This man transcends it. You want to disagree? Drop your address in the comment section. I will gladly meet you somewhere and fight. That part's not true, but that is the great Dr. Fink. I don't even know where to begin to tell you to go find his work and listen to it. Pretty much anything that Prince put out from 1979 to 1991, which includes monumental albums, landmark, seminal, which I've used on here plenty of times, albums that just so happen to include Controversy, 1999, Purple Rain, Around the World in a Day, Sign of the Time. And the songs that guy's played on, the live performances that guy has given, playing right alongside with the greatest to ever fucking do it. And that would be Prince. That right there is an integral part of the revolution. Prince's, in my opinion, greatest incarnation of Prince's career. Prince and the Revolution. That is the great Matt Dr. Fink. I thank him so much for coming on SCUM. I love that man. I love Prince. I've said that on here many times. Despite my hard rock, heavy metal tastes, Prince will always be numero uno for Rex Ruger. So I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. Thank you so much for joining us. And I want to remind you, as always, to take it easy and keep it sleazy.